Hey guys, welcome back to Jody Hughes Music, and today I'm just going to show you a simple jazz lick here that uses one of the concepts from my other video, which is enclosures. I can't remember who I got this from, but I'm sure it had to do something with like Clifford or somebody like that, a trumpet player, let's just say. And so what I'm going to do is start you off with the pattern and then show you how I would practice this, at least if my goal was to play jazz. Because in jazz, you move through keys, you have to be able to play through a lot of different keys, okay? So, I played the lick at the beginning of the video, but let's just say we're gonna start at the top of the circle fifth. So if we were in the key of C, the 5 chord would be G7 and then to a C. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the underlying idea of the lick. So it's basically gonna move you from a 5 into a 1. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna enclose that note, which just so happens to be the third of the 5 chord, the B. So that's the enclosure. And the reason remember, once again, why is it an enclosure? Because, and if you haven't seen the enclosure video, go watch that before you try this. Otherwise you'll be confused. You're like, what's this enclosure stuff? So there's my third of the 5th chord, a B if you will, over the G. So I'm just enclosing it. And then I'm walking down the scale. So it was the B, and now A, G, and this is a G7, so it has to be a G, Mixolydian basically. There's an F, so you have E, D, and that's going to set you up perfectly rhythmically, which is the point. 1, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and where does it resolve you to? It resolves you on the 1 of the 1 chord. So you have this now. And that's a nice little just kind of 2-5. And if you don't understand what I'm doing here, right hand, there's so many options you can do. But the idea is that you have to alternate. They're 8th notes, so you could do something. I'm not telling you what to do. You do what works for you. Some people just do thumb index. That's not what I'm doing, but you could do that. You could just alternate these 2 fingers. And then when you get to there, maybe switch to thumb index. I come up with my own system of just switching all the fingers depending on how I feel. I hate to say how to do it different sometimes. But the idea is you have to work it out that you're alternating your fingers. As long as you're not doing thumb or pointer, you're going to be fine. So that's a 5 to 1. You could use this. You could use this in a bluegrass tune. I mean, it's very bebop-ish, but at the same time. Now, that's the key of C, but what if we were in the key of G? So the key of G, the 2-5 is going to be A minor to D7 to G. So you're going to want to play it over the D7 chord if you're in the key of G. So here's the fingering for that. So once again, where's your third for the D7? There's your F sharp. So I'm going to enclose that. The fingering's kind of very similar, by the way. And then, so it's F sharp to E, D, C, B, A, and then down to G. You have to know your Mixolydian scales. There is a very old video of me somewhere talking about bebop scales and Mixolydian scales. Go watch that. Maybe I'll put a link under the videos. That's going to fit a D7. So you have pick a key, any key. Let's say the key of B flat. So now your 5 chord's going to be F7, E flat. Key of E flat, the 2-5-1 is going to be F minor, B flat 7 to E flat. So now you're at the very end of the range of the banjo. But my point being is that you want to be able to take this lick and run it through all 12 keys if your goal is to play jazz. Now, if you're just going to play fiddle tunes or bluegrass, you're probably going to be fine, like G, C, and D, maybe B flat, and a couple keys. You don't have to do all 12. As my teacher used to call it, the people's keys. You can do like pick 6 keys and run it through that, and if your goal is to play bluegrass and fiddle tunes, you should be fine. You're not going to be playing an E flat fiddle tunes, in bluegrass or folk music and old time for the most part. you know, at the same time, if you shoot higher and you could do that stuff, then when you come back down and you play the, you know, just 4 or 5 keys, then it's going to be a piece of cake. But let me go through this. You know, this is the point of the video, is not to just teach you a lick. You can learn licks anywhere, you know. What I want to do is teach you my mindset about how I view licks. What is the proper way to learn licks, and what do you do with the licks? So first and foremost, what you've hopefully got out of this video is it's not enough to learn a lick in one key, because you're not always going to be playing in that key. You know, if the band member says, hey, I want to play an F, you got to have material to play an F. So, you know, if I'm playing an F now, my lick is... The other thing you should be getting out of this video is, unfortunately, there's a lot of theory to learn, and that theory is going to help you to transpose quickly like I just did, because you've got to be able to look at licks. The point of the theory is not to play by theory, it's to be able to digest the material and assimilate it. That's how I think theory works. So in this case, if I didn't know that this was the third of the 5 chord, it's going to be very hard to catalog the material. So the whole reason for learning these 1, 4, 5s and 1, 3, 5, flat 7 and no chord tones are and all that stuff is so when you see this kind of lick, you know what's going on and you can get into the player's mind. And this lick's not that hard from a jazz perspective, but you know, like if he's like encircling, you know, it's a lot of stuff involved. You're going to want to be able to look at that and say, what in the world is, you know, what is that? And so the point of the theory for me in knowing all these numbers and degrees and scale degrees and chord degrees is to be able to assimilate the material faster and be able to visualize it. So that's another thing. That's why I have a lot of my students that are interested in jazz or classical is to practice arpeggios. So if you know your 5th is there and I say enclose the 5th, you know, let's just say I had a lick and I say, oh, he enclosed the 5th. Well, you'll know it's either that or it's, you know, or some variation on that. But if you don't know your arpeggios, you don't know your chord tones, you don't know your scales, then all this stuff is going to be more difficult. Just like the last part of it. So the way I would say this is he encloses the 3rd of the 5th. And then what's he do? He just runs down the Mixolydian scale. Here. G, F, E, D, and then now you're on 1. And here's the other part of learning licks is, and you'll find this with great players, it could be Charlie Parker, it could be Clifford Brown, is you practice different ways of exiting the lick. So, you know, that final destination is to C. So maybe, whoops. There I just did like a, but you could, you know, sit here all day and just, I'm over here improvising, sorry. Just practice different licks to end on. You know, mixing things up. The other thing too is after you learn a lick like this, you can take the idea and even move it further. So what is the bare bones point of this lick? Is enclose something and then descend the scale. So let's take that idea further. Instead of enclosing the 3rd, what if we enclose the 5th? I don't know, you can close the 5th over a G7. Let's take it further. Okay, I'm going to enclose the 5th. Here's the 5th. So enclose the 5th, and then run down the scale. There's my pattern. Now, of course, you're not going to end on the 1, you're going to end on the 3rd this time. And then you could take this lick and you could just practice it on the different scale degrees. What happens if I do it on the 1? You know, you're going to find out real quick that sometimes they don't resolve and you have to solve them. You know, that's another thing about the bebop stuff. There, I put the half step in. And then I put a, you have to solve it. You have to figure out how can I get to resolve sometimes. So, maybe you want to go to the 5th, maybe you skip something. I don't know. There's all sorts of possibilities here, but my point being is don't just learn licks. Figure out what in the world are they made of, and then apply that to other things. I could say, what happens if I enclose the 7? And then, what happens if I enclose the 9 even? You know, like if I'm on a G7, and I want to enclose the 9. there's my half step that works really well. So there I had to do something besides just descend straight down the scale. So my point behind this video is to show you one basic jazz lick and then show you how I think about learning licks. And I'm going to get into this more, you know, don't get overwhelmed. This is not going to be all there is. I'm going to show you some more jazz licks, and then I'm going to show you some more ideas about how to practice them, how to digest them, how to assimilate the material. Because that's really the hard part, is you don't just learn licks, you learn the ideas behind them, and then you generate your own licks, or you build off of one lick. You can sit here all day and make up some new ones. All right, so take care. This is all there is for today from Jody Hughes Music. Take care.